Welcome to this edition of the Economy and Politics Show. I'm Ottoabasi, Abasiekong. This edition will discuss the rising tide of inflation in Nigeria, fiscal and monetary policy options. Joining me virtually for this conversation is Dr. Muda Yusuf, an economist and CEO, Center for Promotion of Private Enterprise. It's nice to have you joining us virtually once again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's begin with the headline inflation rate, which of course has been released for March 2024. It soared to 33.20%, while food inflation has hit 40%. That is massive. What is your take on the Fiscal Policy Authority's approach so far in the areas of investing in agriculture, power, and infrastructure space, according to the Finance Minister recently at the Lagos Business School, and of course, monetary policy action steps in the area of hiking interest rates, and of course, recent interventions in the foreign exchange market? Has this combination been able to, in a way, begin to address the issues around inflation? And how would you describe this inflation? Demand pull or cost push?
Well, the inflation situation has maintained a consistent trend over the last couple of months. And of course, if we look at the character of the inflationary trend, it is more structural, which is more related to the issue of cost. It looks more like a cost push inflation. Because when in an environment where there's high level of poverty, purchasing power is weak, high unemployment, and yet there is inflation. Certainly the inflation is not coming from the demand side. I'm talking about demand of the average citizen, because they don't have that purchasing power to put pressure on prices. So it's essentially, for me, a phenomenon around the supply side of the economy. It has to do with productivity, cost of production, cost of operations, and things like that. So that is the character of the inflation that we have. We have seen some steps by the authorities on the fiscal side and on the monetary side. But on the fiscal side, we should not be looking only at the federal. We should also be looking at the subnationals, because the subnationals have much bigger role to play with respect to things like agricultural production. The fiscal side, the angle we should be looking at is what the fiscal authorities are doing about ensuring that we have fiscal consolidation, that is not running too much of deficit financing, not much of borrowing from the central bank, reducing fiscal deficits, and also ensuring that we look at our tariff regime, import duty regime, and things like that. So those are the things I think we could ascribe to coming from the fiscal side. So it's both a combination of what the subnationals are doing and what the central government or the federal government is doing. On the monetary side, I think the main instrument of monetary policy has been all this MPR, CRR, liquidity ratio, asymmetric corridor, and so on, which the CBN has been applying in a very, very bullish way. Whether that is going to have a significant impact or not, it remains to be seen. But what we can say at this time is that we are beginning to see some positive outcomes with respect to the exchange rate, which is also a major factor driving inflation. So that is the summary of what I can see as far as the situation is concerned.
Okay, let's look at the current inflation. The food inflation is 40%, and that is quite high. The drivers remain insecurity, rising energy costs, and challenges of logistics. There's been this call for clarity and coordination from fiscal policy in terms of policy. And of course, the president recently announced the Presidential Economic Coordinating Council, which also has the economic management team, and of course, the layers of the Economic Emergency Task Force. So what are your expectations? Because we're looking at the span of between now 6 months and even down to the period of this tenure, in terms of bold steps in coordinated policies that can address the drivers of food inflation and like you rightly said, the structural issues, which has been begging for a clear bullish fiscal policy or economic policy approach?
Well, what one can say with respect to food inflation is that you can see some positive steps being taken by the subnationals. Quite a lot of them are doing a lot, apart from this distribution of palliatives and things like that. Some of them are actually supporting farmers with seedlings, with inputs, and more importantly, with machineries. We have seen quite a lot of that happen. And I'm hoping that that will, in the next few months, we begin to yield some results. We're also beginning to see the fact that the prices of some manufacturing products, some manufactured products are beginning to come down, although still very, very marginal, on the back of what is happening to the exchange rate. I think in the next couple of weeks, maybe a month or two, we begin to see the full impact of the strengthening of the currency in terms of the prices, because many of those in the distribution chain, those who are operators in the economy, whether they are manufacturers or wholesalers or retailers, many of them are still carrying stocks, inventory that they bought at a very high price. So until they exhaust that, we may not begin to see the immediate impact of the strengthening of the currency. So down the road, I expect that impact to begin to manifest within the next couple of weeks. Then, of course, energy cost is a major factor, which is also you can regard to be an issue on the fiscal side as well. Which is what is happening now with the activities around the Dangote refinery, the domestic refining of diesel, of petrol, and the likely, production coming from the Port Harcourt refinery. We're also likely to see a reduction in the price of energy products, and if that also begins to come down, we are beginning to see evidence of that. The cost of diesel is gradually dropping. The cost of PMS is likely to follow. And more importantly, it will reduce the pressure on the foreign exchange market, because importation of petroleum products accounts for about 30% of our import bill. So if by virtue of the domestic refining of petroleum products, that pressure is taken out from the foreign exchange market, in addition to the numerous policies being put in place by the central bank, we're also likely to see some more positive outcomes as far as inflation is concerned. What we are here to see in a very significant time is the deployment of some tariff policies, custom duty rates for exchange rates. Those are elements that are critical on the fiscal side that we need to inject, to further bring down prices. So by the time we have all of these things on board, I think the outlook for inflation will be much better, than what it is currently.
And, tied to that is the interest rate environment, which of course central bank is using as a tool. Like you rightly said, the MPR is currently at 24.75%. In last quarter, we saw two hikes, 400 and 200. That's 600 basis points hike in last quarter. And watching you feature in a different program on another sister TV platform, you talked about the concerns which Ernst & Young shares, the disconnection between the bank and the real sector. It's really evident in the ability to provide credit to the private sector and really support the real sector. And of course, when we look at the current recapitalization exercise of the banking sector, it's supposed to position and to propel growth through credit to the private sector. ProShare just released his analyst note titled Nigeria's Banking Recapitalization, a Crucial Game, a Risky Gamble, and a Lingering Gap, where it also highlights the fact that we're likely going to see more Tier 1 banks, some mergers among the Tier 2 banks, and others will just have to be acquired. But how can we navigate this phase?
Well, first of all, we must realize that the current monetary policy tightening stance of the central bank is creating a lot of challenges for the real sector of the economy. And not just the real sector, all the entrepreneurs in the economy, to the extent that entrepreneurs typically fund their operations with bank credit, not so much with their own money, because there is a limit to how far their own savings can go in terms of growing their businesses. To that extent, there's a major bottleneck with respect to interest rates. I've seen entrepreneurs who said that they have received notice from their banks reviewing their interest rates on existing facility to about 35%. Some say they have got notice of about 40%. So that shows you that we are in a banking system regime that is not actually supporting the real economy or supporting entrepreneurs, that is also by extension not supporting job creation. Because what is happening in the economy now is that it is easier to make money through investment in financial instruments like treasury bills, like federal government bonds, like all manner of financial instruments in the financial system, maybe to some extent the capital market, than investing in the real sector of the economy. And investing in these financial instruments don't give you jobs. It doesn't create much value. It doesn't increase output. It doesn't promote the export. So that misalignment, I think, needs to be corrected. And I'm happy that the central bank governor also, shared that view when he said that this tightening policy will be temporary. And he also appreciates the impact of that on those who are in the real economy. But we need to see more action on that, because the main purpose of a bank, primary purpose, is financial intermediation, which is mobilizing resources from the surplus end of the economy to the deficit end of the economy. That is the primary purpose of a bank. But that essence of banking is gradually fading away in the Nigerian context. Because when you look at the banking landscape, with the tightening, 45% CRR taken out, 30% liquidity ratio to be kept in liquid assets. So what is left? We are talking about 25%. So what can 25% do in terms of supporting the economy and all of that? So it's a major challenge which I think we need to address, because there is no sector of the economy that can give you a return of 30%. No sector, not even trading. Not to talk of people who are in manufacturing or in mining or in agriculture or in hospitality business or in name the sector. So that is why I'm saying that the banking sector as currently configured is completely disconnected from the real economy. And that is not good for our economy. These are some of the trade-offs, I admit, because some progress has been made with respect to the foreign exchange. But again, we need to be careful not to ascribe the outcomes, positive outcomes with the exchange rates, exclusively to the tightening of monetary policy. We need to sit down and do a proper analysis to determine what exactly has successfully impacted on the exchange rates. So I think it's a very important exercise that needs to be done. But in all of this, I think there is need for proper coordination, both on the monetary and fiscal side. And let's see how we can also support the real economy by accelerating action on concessionary financing window, especially the development finance institutions, Bank of Industry, Bank of Agriculture, which has been moribund for some years, Development Bank of Nigeria, and all these other windows. Then SMEs, you need to have a framework that will be less vulnerable to corruption, compared to what we have in the previous administration. Because yes, the intervention funds have been seen as not being very good because of the abuses, but we have to be careful that we don't throw away the baby with the bathwater. We still need concessionary financing to support this economy.
Very true, Dr. Muda. I will take what you said, concessionary financing, and we have to equip the development finance institutions, Bank of Industry, Development Bank of Nigeria, and that Bank of Agriculture needs to come on board so that we can begin to see that connection with the economy. We rightly said it, the constraints on the banking system, 45% cash reserve ratio, and this whole calculation exercise needs to propel the banks to really support growth, but that is something that has to be reviewed from monetary side very critically. As we begin to wrap up, what's the outlook for households with these inflation rates? 33.20%, 40% food inflation, headline 30.20%. Well, I mean, almost around 10, 11% of what we see in Argentina, 300% inflation. We don't pray never to get to that level. But what are the implications for households and businesses, even with the energy tariff increase for Bane customers?
Yes, I think that with what is beginning to happen around the exchange rate, we are likely to begin to see some moderation in inflation. The moderation or the improvement in the foreign exchange market happened only just about 3 weeks, started to improve only about 3 weeks ago.
Yes.
And we are talking about inflation rate of March. So before the impact of this improvement begins to manifest, we should be looking at the inflation rate of either the current month or that of May, because there is normally a lag, because of the issues of inventory and stock that people already accumulated when prices were high. So for me, I think that is likely to impact on the outlook going forward. I talked about the outlook for energy prices, which is also a major factor in inflation. Yes. The outlook is also looking positive, but again, that is to the extent that we're able to ramp up domestic refining of petroleum products. Because internationally, oil price is now increasing because of all this Iran, geopolitical tension in the Middle East. Oil price is almost crossing $90 per barrel. So if we begin to import, that will be a major challenge for energy prices. So our hope lies a lot with the domestic refining. If we're able to sustain that trajectory, then the outlook for inflation is likely to continue to be better. Then we're also likely to see the impact of base effect going forward. By the time we begin to step into June, July, the base effect will kick in, and that will also reduce inflation rate.
Thank you once again, Dr. Muda Yusuf, CEO of the Center for Promotion of Private Enterprise, for this interesting insights you've shared on the rising tide of inflation in Nigeria, fiscal and monetary policy options. We look forward to further conversations as we monitor and tackle the issues of inflation in the country.
Thank you very much.
To our viewers, if you want to get further insights on this conversation, visit the ProShare website displayed on the screen and follow our social media platforms to engage further on this show. Like we said earlier, ProShare has released an analyst note. Nigeria's banking recapitalization, a crucial game, a risky gamble, and a lingering gap. You need to log on to that website and get insights from the latest analyst note. Very insightful. To become your way again, enrich yourself with the knowledge of socioeconomic developments around you, because it's the wise thing to do. I'm Ottoabasi, Abasiekong. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.